Hello, I'm Kathy Jameson, the Proposition Lady, and I'm here to help you understand the state propositions on your California election ballot. Today I'm going to talk about Prop 45, a citizen-initiated state statute which, if passed, would amend California's Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, to expedite and cut costs for essential construction projects. CEQA requires that state and local government agencies consider how a construction project might impact the environment before approving it. If the agency determines a project would significantly affect the environment, they must then determine whether those impacts could be mitigated with minor changes. If not, they must then conduct a more detailed review. Throughout the process, the state or local agency must collect comments from the public and other agencies. Even when a project is approved, citizens can sue the local agency if they believe the CEQA process was not followed correctly. If they win, they can halt an entire project already in progress until the issue is corrected. CEQA was signed into law by then-Governor Ronald Reagan in 1970. Since then, the CEQA project checklist has grown from an initial 10 pages to over 500 pages by 2021. CEQA laws are often cited as the reason we can't build our way out of California's housing crisis. Anyone who opposes a project can use CEQA to stop it, whether or not they have genuine environmental concerns. And it has been used by trade unions to negotiate expensive labor agreements with developers. It's easy to see how costs and timelines can quickly get out of control. In 2025, California lawmakers passed legislation that exempts various types of projects from CEQA, including things like housing near public transit and wildfire mitigation. They also put a 60-day limit on the approval time government agencies have once a completed application has been submitted. But the California Chamber of Commerce doesn't believe those reforms go far enough. They sponsored Prop 45 with the goal of increasing development and improving affordability. Those are two of the biggest reasons people will vote yes on Prop 45. Prop 45 starts by defining what kind of projects are essential to California. These include housing, water systems, clean energy, health facilities, public safety, broadband internet access, educational facilities, and transportation. For projects deemed essential, the new rules would expedite the application process by requiring the approving agency to specify everything needed for an application before it is submitted. Currently, those agencies are allowed to repeatedly request additional information. Next, the new rules would require the approving agency to assess environmental impacts based on the laws in place at the time of the application. Currently, agencies are allowed to revise its standards based on new information or guidelines. Prop 45 would also streamline the process for suggesting product modifications. Instead of multiple project alternatives to mitigate environmental impacts, essential projects would only need to propose one. Prop 45 would limit the amount of time the approving agency can accept comments from the public and other government agencies, setting a maximum number of days instead of just a minimum. Lastly, Prop 45 changes how courts review project challenges. It reduces the scope of what the court can consider, and if a plaintiff wins, they cannot halt an entire project. They can only halt the part of the project that is at issue. The measure sets a 365 business day limit on environmental reviews and requires courts to issue a ruling within 270 days. Put together, opponents argue that Prop 45 will weaken the protections that stop large corporations and developers from damaging California's environment. That's a big reason many people will vote no. Supporters would say that these amendments only apply to projects essential to California, not all projects. But opponents of the measure argue that the definition of essential could be interpreted to include things like highways and data centers. That could be another reason to vote no. But opponents of the measure believe Prop 45 is unnecessary because the legislature is already in the process of amending CEQA, and there are strict guidelines for how Prop 45 can be amended. So if we pass it and there are unintended consequences, it may be hard to course correct. That's another reason some people will want to vote no. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimates that Prop 45 will cost state and local governments, including the courts, in the high tens of millions of dollars annually, possibly exceeding $100 million per year in the first several years. That's because local governments will have to develop new guidelines and standards and meet tighter deadlines. After this initial period of change, costs would likely settle down. Opponents argue that local governments simply don't have the funds to meet the new guidelines. But supporters would say that development in California is stagnated and that we have to do something. Other fiscal impacts could be significant, but it's uncertain how any of them would play out. According to the Fair Political Practices Commission, as of August 21st, at least $20.6 million has been donated in support of Prop 45. $10 million of that came from the Building a Better California Coalition, funded by a group of wealthy donors like Sergey Brin, Michael Moritz, and others. Other donors include the Chamber itself, the California Building Industry Association, Edison International, and other business and utility groups who stand to benefit from more development. At least $11.5 million has been raised in opposition, mostly by environmental groups and building trade union PACs. Amendments to the California Environmental Quality Act proposed by Prop 45 have the potential to increase development and improve housing affordability in the state. But will those amendments put California's environmental quality at risk? I'm Kathy Jameson, the Proposition Lady, and I appreciate you being here with me today. See you soon, California voters. Bye now.